What's going on, and welcome back to another gear review and comparison. And in this video we're going to be going over a couple of body whip antennas as well as antenna relocation kits. Now when it comes to these systems, and as you're setting up your kit and setting up communications equipment on your kit, you're going to really want to pay attention to what you're doing, because believe it or not, when it comes to comms equipment, this stuff can break really easily. A lot of the guys that I've worked with have used a lot of these systems that you see here, and a lot of us have actually had a lot of the same problems with a couple of the items that are on the table. So we're going to talk a little bit on those pieces and where those failure points are, but then we're also going to talk a lot on the success piece, and then some of the kind of tips and tricks when it comes to setting up your kit, so that way it's easy to manipulate your radios, easy to replace batteries, get crypto in them if you're running any type of military radios that need that, and then set you up for success ultimately for your mission, operational environment, and duty position. So with that, I'm going to dive right into it. When it comes to pricing, you're going to range from about $40 all the way up to $75. Now that's going to specifically depend on what options you want when it comes to the setup of your antennas. You can go with just your standard thread system like you can see here, where you just thread that onto the connector on your radio, or you can go with something like this QD adapter or a SMA connector, to where you have both your vertical and your 90-degree turns, and this is just going to connect and then twist into place. No threading necessary when it comes down to it. You're just kind of permanently attaching this to your radio and then connecting your antenna to that. So those are kind of the real big things that you have to think about when it comes to the setup and the options. The other thing is how they're constructed. For the most part, all of these are very similar in construction. Some of the materials are going to vary when it comes down to it. Your Disco 3.2 is going to have this kind of mesh shroud over it, or sleeve. Really cool when it comes down to it. It's kind of a heat shrink slash plastic coating underneath that, so it is pretty waterproof when it comes down to that, and then heat shrink on the connection points. And then the cattail is going to be 550 cord with heat shrink and waterproofing around around everything. With the cool thing with this guy is underneath that 550 cord, it's kind of a wax slash plastic coating around the antenna wire itself, so still pretty waterproof. He's just using 550 cord instead of this mesh or just straight up heat shrink. So this thing is pretty much, the antenna is all completely concealed inside of this heat shrink material for the 21st Tactical Mantenna, and this thing is like completely waterproof when it comes down to it, except for right here where it connects. So if you're in a maritime environment and you're dealing with salt water, this may be the one to go with. If you're not, then you have some options with some of these other systems. So there are a couple of different variations and setups and options, ultimately is what it really comes down to for these companies and what they have to offer. I don't know all of them. I know 21st Tactical is very specific about pretty much this is it. The difference is you can change your SMA connector or your just thread-on connector. It's really up to you on what you want. I recommend the SMA. It just makes things a lot easier when it comes to swapping batteries and doing crypto. The cattail one, he has the RTO and the squad leader, and that really kind of boils down to just the connection piece. I haven't really read anything too in detail that makes it sound really different as far as the rest of the construction goes. So just take the time, read through the descriptions that he has on his stuff, and make sure that you're purchasing exactly what you want and exactly what you need for your radio setups. And then when it comes to Disco 3.2, he's got a whole slew of items when it comes to antennas and antenna relocation kits, from lengths. He can do like specific frequencies and all of that, so it gets a little bit more in depth. When it comes to antenna relocation kits, definitely purchase the Raptor Tactical Antenna Relocation Pouch. This is probably the #1 out on the market right now. It's super streamlined and real simple. You got MOLLE on the back, a little bit of elastic up front here, and then the channeling for your rigid antenna, and then the connector point and all of that. So highly recommend this if you want to run a rigid antenna or need to run a rigid antenna because you're trying to push that that transmission as far out as you can, and get the most range and performance out of your radios. That's one thing that I do think is pretty important, is your body whip antennas may not perform as well as a rigid antenna. So depending on what you have going on, and like I always say with that mission, operational environment, and duty position, if you need the most range and the most performance, go with an antenna relocation kit, run that rigid antenna so that way you're getting the most range out of your radios and being able to communicate long distance. If you're not and you only need to worry about a couple of floors or maybe down the road, so to speak, during an operation or in training environments, then your body whips are going to be a little bit easier. It's been a really long time, honestly, since I've been an RTO and when I was in the infantry, so a lot of this stuff's kind of eluding me, but I am getting into a little bit of the ham radio stuff and some two-way commercial radios that are just non-standard equipment. And when it comes to the two-way radios, I like running these body whips because I don't have to worry about range all that much. It's pretty close, a couple of floors difference or down the road. And then I'll run the antenna relocation kits for like ham radios because I still want that rigid antenna and I want the most range out of that system as I can get. So a couple of things and food for thought when it comes to the setup of your kit and making sure that you're maximizing the performance of all of your equipment so that way you're able to shoot, move, and communicate with ease and not have anything that's inhibiting you from being able to perform your job. So with that, when it comes to the overall performance, I have not had any issues with either of these guys. These things do really, really well. The one issue that I have had with both the antenna relocation kit and the body whip antennas from Disco 3.2 is down here at the connection point, this guy likes to break real easily. Depending on your operational environment and guys that have been in the tactical world a little bit or spent some time in there, they're going to understand that the tactical environment is completely unpredictable and it will destroy your kit the same day that you purchase it. I remember buying one of these and the next day I was fast roping and it completely sheared the antenna from the connector on the radio as I was exiting the aircraft. So super frustrating because it was $60 out of my pocket and I had to buy another one. And then a couple of other guys that I've worked with had the same issues. This broke or disconnected internally just because of the environments that we were in and rendered the antenna completely inoperable. So it's something that you really have to watch out for. A fix for this is take some heat shrink and from the top of where everything connects to the actual kind of cabling all the way down to roughly about halfway down the connector right here. You can heat shrink that and that helps protect things, but I think it definitely could use some tooling when it comes to looking at that piece and fixing that kind of failure point, because a lot of guys that I know that have purchased these have had that same issue and it disconnects and breaks a lot. So not so much with these guys. I know a lot of guys that run the cattail and I know a handful of dudes that run the mantenna and no issues there because the way that these guys are set up, you have pretty much heat shrink from the top all the way down to the bottom of where that connector piece is. This guy with the QD is a little bit different, but not a whole lot, but like there's still a good chunk of material that's covering up and protecting where your cable is essentially going through and connecting all in here. So those guys can speak a lot better on that piece when it comes to the actual construction of these things. I'm just going off of the experience that myself and a couple of the guys I've worked with have. So, and then, yeah, like this guy, you can see the, you can still twist that thread on portion, but that heat shrink is from about halfway and then quite a ways past, couple inches past where that connecting piece and all of that is. So highly recommend all the companies. They're really good companies when it comes down to it. A couple of things to watch out for and or things that you may need to modify on your kit when it comes down to it. My go-to is definitely these guys right now. They do an awesome job. This guy definitely for maritime environments, and then this guy if you just want to keep it simple, save a little bit of money. The performance of these two guys is very close. I don't really have any issues with the performance of those guys at all. So with that, if you have any questions, please feel free, leave a comment. I will answer any questions that you have. If it's a question that I don't have an answer for because I don't remember the information when it comes to some of the radio stuff, I will refer to one of the smarter, more tech-savvy guys that I know and get them in there to answer any of those very specific questions when it comes to, you could say, the science behind all of comms. So with that, like I said, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.